If you walked into a bank, dressed plainly, wearing no jewelry without an entourage, would you be denied the right to withdraw money from your own account simply because you didn't look the part? This story begins on an otherwise ordinary morning in Los Angeles. A Latina woman, modestly dressed, calm in demeanor, walked into a West Point bank branch to withdraw a large sum of money. She didn't shout. She didn't flaunt anything. She didn't threaten anyone. Just one request: to withdraw the money that she herself had earned. But within minutes, she was dismissed, doubted, and escorted out of the branch by none other than the same branch manager who once authored a report on inclusion and fairness in customer service. What no one at the bank realized was that this woman was actually the CEO of a major tech corporation and a silent strategic shareholder in the very banking system they work for. 7 minutes later, everything changed. This isn't just the story of a CEO being underestimated. It's a journey that exposes bias, overturns a broken service culture, and rewrites the rules of justice from within. At the end of the video, a behavioral psychologist will analyze why Sophia's quiet kindness had the power to spark such a seismic cultural shift. And the biggest question of all will be answered. Are we living in a society where respect is only granted to those who look like they deserve it? If you believe that dignity doesn't need to be proven, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with at least one person you've seen treated unfairly. And now, let's return to the moment when a serene smile brought an entire power structure to silence. Los Angeles, 8:47 a.m. The sky was crystal clear, as if freshly washed by a brief overnight rain. Sunlight streamed between high-rise buildings, casting shadows on the spotless sidewalks, where polished dress shoes rushed past the staccato rhythm of high heels, tapping in sync with the financial heartbeat of the city. At the corner of 7th and Main, in the busiest financial district of Los Angeles, a sleek silver SUV pulled up in front of a grand building. West Point Bank, Central Branch. A woman stepped out. No security entourage. No chauffeur opening her door. She held her own handbag, adjusted her simple white blouse, and walked forward, as if she was well accustomed to blending into the crowd without leaving a trace. None of the passers-by, nor the security guard at the main entrance, knew that this woman was Sofia Rivera, CEO of Rivera Tech, one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the western United States. A company valued at nearly $800 million, preparing for its IPO in just a few months. No one knew, and Sofia didn't want anyone to know. She wore no name tag, no luxury watch, no tailored suit or evening gown. Today she chose a long-sleeve white blouse, neatly rolled at the elbows, gray slacks, and light brown low-heeled shoes. On her wrist was a single red string bracelet, a gift from her late grandmother, a constant reminder. No matter how far you go, never forget where you came from. Inside the bank, everything exuded modernity and pride. The reception desk gleamed. Soft lighting shone down on cream-colored marble floors, creating a space that felt both warm and powerful. Behind the main counter was a bold, raised-letter slogan: respect, equity, inclusion. We serve everyone. It was the slogan used in the branch's recent marketing campaign, aimed at minority communities and DEI organizations. A polished, promising image. But Sofia knew too well. Those beautiful words didn't always align with reality. She had come for one simple reason: to withdraw a large amount, $200,000, from her company account to finalize a private transaction with a foreign partner who was en route to LAX. She had completed similar transactions before, but this time, for confidentiality and urgency, she chose to come in person rather than delegate or transfer online. Straightforward, by the book, nothing unusual, just another ordinary morning. She walked toward the teller section. 3 windows were open. The third one, closest to the large street-facing window, was free. A small nameplate sat neatly on the desk: Victoria Hayes, branch manager. Victoria appeared to be in her 40s, straight blonde hair tied neatly behind her head, a navy business dress, shiny black heels, and thin-frame glasses perched on her nose. Her face bore a certain sternness, as if the lines around her mouth were formed not from smiling, but from disapproving. As Sofia approached, Victoria looked up, her eyes barely pausing for a second. "Hello, I need to make a withdrawal from my business account," Sophia said, handing over her VIP client card. Victoria took the card, glanced at it mechanically. But instead of typing into her system, she paused. She looked up, then at Sophia again. A quick glance, brief but long enough for Sophia to feel it. Victoria was sizing her up with a single look. "Do you have any other identification?" Victoria asked, her tone even, cold. "I have my ID card and company contracts if needed," Sophia replied, calm but firm. "How much are you withdrawing?" Victoria still hadn't touched the keyboard. $200,000, Sophia said. Victoria frowned, not with surprise, but with discomfort. "What's the money for?" she asked. Sophia smiled politely. "I believe that falls outside the scope of standard verification." "Well, usually our clients don't perform large transactions like this without an appointment," Victoria said, ignoring Sophia's point. "I scheduled the appointment through the system yesterday at 5 p.m., Sophia responded, maintaining her calm tone. Victoria turned to her computer. One click. Silence. "Oh," she said. "Looks like there is an appointment, but no transaction purpose listed. For a sum this large, I have the right to request further verification." She stressed the word "I" as if it were her personal privilege, not a bank policy. Sophia took a quiet breath, still holding her bag steadily. "I can provide the company contract or have my assistant send confirmation. But this is a company account, which I personally manage." Victoria squinted. "You are?" "Sophia Rivera, CEO of Rivera Tech." Silence. No keyboard clacking, no acknowledgement. Victoria didn't nod, didn't confirm. She simply leaned back, folded her arms, and chuckled faintly. The kind of chuckle people give when they hear a joke that doesn't land. "You're the CEO?" She emphasized you. Sophia nodded. "That's right." Victoria tilted her head. "No driver, no assistant, no entourage, and dressed, quite plainly. Fascinating." That last word wasn't a compliment. Sophia said nothing. She understood what she was facing. Not bank policy, not paperwork, but something deeper, an invisible prejudice, wrapped in a cloak of artificial professionalism. The belief that a Latina woman couldn't be a multi-million-dollar CEO, that someone who looked ordinary like her couldn't possibly be a VIP client. That power must be expressed through Rolex watches and Chanel bags, not quiet confidence and proper documentation. Behind the service counter, a few young employees murmured among themselves. A young man in a short-sleeved shirt leaned toward his colleague and whispered, though not quietly enough, "She probably thinks she owns a taco joint or something." A brunette girl giggled. "Maybe she's a secretary or something, but CEO, please." Sophia heard it, not because she had exceptional hearing, but because when you're being targeted, whispers are always louder than background music or lobby announcements. But she said nothing. She just stood there, back straight, calm. Her silence, just like always, made others more uncomfortable than any protest could. Sophia placed her hand gently on the counter, eyes steady on Victoria. "If you're unable to proceed with a confirmed transaction, I'll need to speak with someone with higher authority." Victoria tightened her lips. "I am the authority here." Her voice rose, and in that moment, the air around them grew palpably colder. Sophia stayed silent, but this time her gaze carried more than calm. It carried fire. The room seemed to hold its breath. And then, right at that moment, Victoria reached out and pressed the internal call button. A security guard appeared in the far right corner of the lobby, walking toward them. "Would you kindly escort this guest out?" Victoria said loudly, making sure the entire lobby could hear. The guard hesitated. "Is there an issue with the guest?" he asked, looking at Sophia, clearly confused by the unusual request. "She is unable to verify her identity and is being disruptive," Victoria snapped. Sophia breathed slowly. She looked down at the floor for a moment, then looked up. Her eyes now held something different. They were no longer the eyes of a customer denied service. They were the eyes of someone well acquainted with injustice, and someone who knew exactly what she was going to do next. Sophia Rivera was not the kind of person easily shaken by whispers, but that morning, beneath the soft golden lights of West Point Bank, she could feel the air shifting, from indifferent to subtly hostile, like a toxic draft no one could see, but everyone could feel. The tone, the glances, the way people tilted their heads when repeating a question. None of it was overtly aggressive, but it was far from neutral. It was that distinctively American form of discrimination, gentle in form, never loud, but sharp enough to slice one's dignity like a razor gliding across skin. Victoria Hayes, the branch manager, was the embodiment of that style. "The amount you've requested to withdraw is $200,000, she repeated, as if quoting a criminal report. "And you're not accompanied by legal counsel, no assistant, no driver, no direct appointment with me." "I scheduled the appointment through the system yesterday." "The system confirmed it clearly," Sophia replied, her gaze steady on the woman trying to maintain a calm front. "The issue is," Victoria emphasized, "even with an appointment, we still need to conduct further verification, especially in unclear cases like this." "Unclear cases like this?" Sophia echoed, her voice unforced. Victoria leaned forward slightly as if to apply pressure. "What I mean is, a client who arrives without an assistant, no specific meeting with the manager, no clear explanation for the use of a large amount of money, while..." She paused. Sophia raised an eyebrow, still gentle. "While I'm a woman of color wearing a white blouse?" Victoria pressed her lips together. "That's not what I'm implying." "You don't have to say it," Sophia replied, her tone as if they were chatting over afternoon tea. "The way you look at me, the pause in your sentence, it said everything." A staff member in the back, the blond man who had mocked Sophia earlier, looked up. He glanced at Victoria, then at Sophia, his expression caught between realization and shame. Perhaps he had never been questioned about his own biases before, but now the silence in the room was forcing him to face something never taught in any bank training program: personal accountability. Another customer, a black woman waiting in line, took a small step back, clutching her purse tighter. She said nothing, but her eyes met Sophia's, full of understanding, as if she too had once stood at that very counter, once been judged for not wearing heels or not speaking English. "Well enough." Victoria inhaled and straightened up. "I'm following proper security protocols. If you cannot provide documentation verifying your role in the company and your authority over this business account, we will have to..." "Decline the transaction?" Sophia finished gently. "Well, if I do provide all the documents, will you still refuse me?" "That," Victoria hesitated, "depends on the credibility of the documents." Sophia opened her bag and calmly pulled out a tidy stack of papers. Operating agreements, ownership certificates, notarized documents from the legal office. Everything, meticulously prepared, as if she had known this would happen. She placed them on the counter, quietly. "How many layers of verification would you like to see? I can sit here all day." Victoria didn't reach for the papers right away. She just stood there staring at Sophia, as if weighing not the legalities but the collision between reality and the prejudice she had nurtured for far too long. A long, uncomfortable silence. Then Victoria stepped back and hit the internal call button. A security guard approached, young, athletic, still looking a little sleepy. He seemed familiar with management's calls, but today he looked uncertain, catching Sophia's eyes. There was no defiance in them, no rage, but there was something unsettling. "Please escort this guest out of the lobby. We can't proceed without full cooperation," Victoria declared. Sophia didn't move. Instead, she reached into her blouse pocket and pulled out a small business card. She placed it on the desk before Victoria, lightly but with clarity. The card was embossed, without frills. Black letters on white. Sophia Rivera, founder and CEO. Rivera Tech Inc. below was a QR code linking to her profiles on Forbes and Bloomberg, and to articles naming Sophia as one of the most influential Latina women in American tech. Victoria looked at the card, looked closely. Her eyes widened slightly, not out of surprise but shame. That name, familiar, too familiar. She'd seen it on the evening news when Rivera Tech closed its Series C round, on magazine covers when Sophia awarded scholarships to Latina students in South LA. But she had never imagined she would see that name. Standing before her, no nameplate, no media team, no polished exterior. Just a woman in a white blouse and a direct gaze. Sophia said nothing. She picked up her phone and swiftly dialed a number. Maya, she said, initiate clause B-22, West Point Branch, Central. On the other end, her assistant replied simply, confirmed. The call ended. Sophia didn't drop her smile, but this time her gaze had changed. It was no longer soft. There was something stern now, as if she had just placed a stone down on a chessboard. The room fell silent, like the air had been sucked out. A female teller at the next counter swallowed hard. The guard remained still, unsure what to do. Sophia hadn't asked anyone to back down. Victoria didn't repeat her command. Everyone was suspended between two worlds, the old order that had just collapsed and the new one not yet formed. Then the landline rang. Victoria picked up. The voice on the other end belonged to Thomas Garland, regional director overseeing all West Point branches in Southern California. I'm watching the CCTV footage, he said bluntly. It's very clear, very detailed. Sir, I can explain. No need, he cut her off. I'm asking you to leave the branch immediately. An interim manager is on the way. Be prepared for the internal meeting at noon. And Victoria, I suggest you bring legal counsel. Victoria didn't respond. She hung up like someone who had just missed a step. The entire room, from staff to customers, barely dared to breathe. Sophia turned to the guard gently. You won't need to escort anyone. Everything is proceeding as it should. He nodded respectfully. Sophia looked at Rachel, the young teller closest to her. Rachel nodded back, stepping forward. Not because Sophia was a CEO, but because she had just witnessed a masterclass in how a woman can protect her dignity without ever raising her voice. Ms. Rivera, Rachel said, slightly trembling, we sincerely apologize. Sophia smiled, her first warm smile that morning. It's all right. It's better to learn than to retreat. Victoria packed up her things. No one helped her. As she walked out, her footsteps no longer echoed. Only the sound of a soft sigh remained, like wind through a door just closed. And left behind in the bank that morning was something that had never existed before. A silence, worth remembering. Sophia returned to the counter. Rachel was already waiting. This time, Sophia didn't need a VIP card. She didn't need a business card. She only needed to be herself. That afternoon, West Point Bank continued operating as if nothing had happened. Except for one thing. Victoria Hayes' chair at window 3 sat empty. It was no longer a symbol of authority. It had become a silent void, a space no employee dared approach. Not out of sympathy, but because that chair now served as a vivid reminder. Arrogance wrapped in false professionalism can be exposed if met by the right person at the right moment. And Sophia Rivera was that person. As Sophia continued her transaction with Rachel, glances kept darting in her direction. No more whispers, no more snickering. But inside their heads, a storm was brewing. Sophia, petite, sun-kissed, composed, had needed no yelling, no arguing, no dramatic proof. She had simply placed a business card on a desk, and an entire power structure had collapsed. But not everyone could accept that so easily. At the far end of the lobby, a young man named Liam, the one who had mocked Sophia earlier, slouched behind his computer. He didn't look directly at her, but inside a wave of mixed feelings surged: shame, resentment, and bruised pride. She really knows how to put on a show, he whispered to the colleague beside him. Haley, the brunette who had laughed when Sophia was initially denied service. Could be just a stunt, Haley replied quietly, glancing at Sophia, then quickly back to her screen. Maybe she really is who she says. But that whole attitude, fake as hell. Like she's trying to prove something to the whole world, Liam muttered, bitterness creeping in. Or maybe it's just 'cause she's a woman, Haley smirked. Women with power tend to get hated on. Normal women are fine, Liam insisted, but ones like her, acting like they've been wronged, then flashing their CEO card like the world owes them, it's too much. Rachel, still working with Sophia, heard them. She tilted her head slightly, not looking at them, but there was no pretending she hadn't heard. A moment later, she turned to Sophia. You wanted to withdraw $150,000 in cash and transfer $50,000 to the escrow account, correct? Exactly. And I'd like full receipt documentation, including internal transaction logs, Sophia replied, calm but clear. Rachel nodded and continued her work. But inside, she was churning. She couldn't unhear the whispers behind her. She had watched Sophia stay composed. She had seen Victoria fall. She had seen customers' eyes when the truth was revealed. And now, hearing her own colleagues, the ones she had once laughed along with, continue their gossip, she felt sickened. When the documents were ready, Rachel handed the entire stack to Sophia. Please review everything. It's all been verified and officially stamped. Sophia skimmed through them. Her eyes caught a faint reflection in the left glass panel. Liam and Haley still whispering. Haley chuckled quietly. Liam shrugged as if to say, "Told you so." Not a word was spoken, but none were needed. Sometimes contempt doesn't need sound, just enough eyes and enough witnesses. Rachel lowered her voice. "Ms. Rivera, may I say something?" Sophia looked up. "You don't need to hear what they just said, but I also can't pretend I didn't hear it. I'm ashamed that I laughed along with them this morning. Truly." Rachel's words gave Sophia pause. She looked at Rachel more closely. A young woman, eyes slightly sunken, not from fatigue, but from awakening. Awakening to the fact that everything she thought she understood about fairness and customer service had just been dismantled. Sophia nodded slowly. "Thank you for your courage. I don't need everyone to understand. Just one person who does. That's enough to start change." Just then, Martin, the interim branch manager, entered from the side door. A middle-aged man, calm and understated. Sophia had met him once at a citywide DEI summit. Martin walked straight toward Rachel, Sophia, and the counter. He smiled unfazed. "Ms. Rivera, we've just been briefed on the situation. On behalf of West Point, I offer our sincerest apologies." Sophia stood and shook his hand. "No need to apologize, just make it right." Martin nodded respectfully. "I'm holding an emergency meeting with our internal ethics board. If you're willing, I'd like to invite you to advise on a program we're launching, called the Respect Protocol." Sophia narrowed her eyes. "You mean turning today's experience into a training module for your entire network?" "Exactly." Sophia paused, then replied, "I don't need a fancy advisory title. But let me tell you one thing. If your system isn't ready to confront what your own staff whispers every day, then no protocol or training will matter." Martin nodded. "We'll start here, with this branch." The story began to spread. A customer had recorded part of the incident on video. A short clip appeared on Reddit, just 20 seconds of Sophia placing her business card on the counter and Victoria backing away. The video was reposted by a user named Equality Inside, with the caption, "This Latina CEO didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard." Within 24 hours, it had surpassed 2 million views. But that was tomorrow's story. That afternoon, as Sophia stepped out of the bank, Rachel stood behind the glass, watching her go. She was no longer just an anonymous bank teller. She was a witness to something she would never forget. And more than that, she was the first in that building brave enough to say, "I'm sorry." Inside the bank, Liam and Haley pretended to be busy. They said nothing more. They knew eyes were on them. And for the first time in their months of working there, they felt exposed. Sophia didn't look back. She didn't need to, because people like her, they don't look back to know they were right. They look forward to change what's still wrong. That day, Sophia didn't just withdraw money. She withdrew a truth. The truth about a system that had grown more reliant on instinct than on principles. Everyone at the bank knew it. They were standing in the first wave of a cultural storm, rising right in the heart of an institution they once believed was untouchable. But the silence among most was just surface level. Underneath, reactions were shifting quietly. Those who had stood by while Sophia was denied, doubted, humiliated, now found themselves on a threshold. Either embrace change or retreat behind the glass wall of performative professionalism. Martin, the newly appointed interim manager, convened an emergency meeting at 3 p.m. in the second-floor office. He required all staff to sign a commitment to participate in an internal standards reassessment audit within 48 hours. But what shocked them more was his announcement. Sophia Rivera would be returning to the branch next week, not as a client, but as an independent advisor. Liam exhaled sharply. "We're getting audited over one arrogant customer?" Haley pressed her lips together. Not arrogant, powerful. Rachel overheard. This time she didn't stay quiet. It's about dignity, she said clearly, and the right to be treated with respect, just like anyone else. When Sophia heard the news from Maya, her assistant, she went silent for a full minute. Not out of surprise, but because she was calculating the ripple effect of every step. She knew, if she returned, she wouldn't just represent herself. She would carry the weight of expectation for millions of Latina women, for all those who had ever been dismissed for not dressing to someone else's standards. I'll go back, she said, but not to train them, to test them. Test them how? Maya asked. To see if they've actually changed, or if they're just performing to please me. 3 days later, Sophia returned to West Point Bank. This time she wasn't alone. She was joined by Elena, Rivera Tech's Director of Community Relations, and Noah, a DEI data analyst, the same expert who helped Sophia develop an anonymous customer service scoring system based on race and social class. No one in the group wore anything flashy. Elena wore a neutral-tone business dress. Noah carried a backpack. Sophia, still in her white blouse, hair tied up neatly, wore only one thing different: a small pin on her collar bearing the Rivera Tech logo, a circle formed by two clasped hands, one brown, one white. As they entered the lobby, Sophia noticed it immediately. The staff stood straighter. Their glances were more cautious. Their service, a little too stiff. But that didn't please her. She wasn't looking for performance. She was looking for authenticity. Martin welcomed them at the door. We've implemented the respect protocol just as promised. Each employee has completed mandatory training. But more importantly, we want you to audit us in the real world. Sophia didn't resist. She offered a faint smile. Good. Then I won't say anything. I'll just observe. And so the audit began. Over the next 90 minutes, Sophia and her two colleagues walked around the bank, approaching each counter, posing as regular customers with small requests, from exchanging change to inquiring about account types. They never introduced themselves. They just watched. How employees looked at them, how they greeted them, whether they smiled or didn't. They recorded every word, every glance. And then, they reached Liam's desk. Noah, the only black member of the group, stepped forward with a simple question. Hi, I'd like to open a savings account for my younger brother who's starting college. Who should I speak to? Liam glanced at Noah, his eyes pausing briefly. Without making eye contact, he replied, You can check the website. We've got all the information online. Noah nodded, his tone calm. I already checked, but I wanted to ask someone in person. Liam sighed, glanced at the clock and said, I'm busy. Can you come back later? No offer to find someone else. No smile. No effort. Sophia stood a few steps away, eyes fixed on the interaction. Elena leaned in, whispering, He still hasn't learned. It's not that he hasn't learned, Sophia said. He doesn't want to. Martin, after receiving a preliminary report, immediately called Liam to his office. Not to reprimand him, but to hear his explanation. I was just doing my job, Liam protested. I'm not obligated to handle every little question from walk-ins. But if the customer were white, would you have refused in the same way? Martin asked directly. Liam was silent. Then there's still a culture problem here, Martin sighed. Sophia walked in right then. She looked at Liam, the same young man who had mocked her behind her back. Now sitting before her, stripped of arrogance. You don't have to like me, she said, but you need to learn to see people beyond the clothes they wear. Because if you don't, you'll spend your whole career dealing with nothing but reflections of your own bias. Liam lowered his head. He had no words. Sophia didn't request that he be fired, but she did recommend his transfer to the internal processing department, a position with no customer interaction, and mandated his completion of the bias recovery course within 14 days to keep his job. Haley, who had once laughed along with him, was also formally warned, but not reassigned. She was the first to apologize directly to Noah after the audit. A small difference, but a meaningful one. Before leaving the bank, Sophia left a handwritten note, taped beside the branch's slogan. Respect isn't a slogan, it's an action, especially when no cameras are around. SR. Not everyone understands the true power of silence. until they find themselves in a room where every eye is drawn to someone who doesn't need to raise her voice to command attention. Sofia Rivera was that kind of person. After the internal audit at the West Point branch, it seemed like everything had wrapped up. Martin submitted his report to the executive board. An interdepartmental meeting was held. An internal memo circulated with the title, "A Commitment to Renewal, from Service Culture to Policy Transparency." But Sofia knew. Documents don't change people. If you want change, you need truth. And sometimes truth must be made public at just the right moment. Friday, 10 a.m. At the 17th floor auditorium of West Point Financial's headquarters in downtown Los Angeles, a closed-door event was held. Community Advisory and Organizational Reform. Only about 30 people were invited. Senior bank leadership, DEI representatives from multiple branches, and special advisors. Sofia Rivera was present, not as a client, but as a strategic partner. What no one in that room knew was that Sofia had quietly become a minority shareholder in West Point's parent company a year earlier. It was a discreet transaction, only documented in corporate share transfer records. She never wanted her name public, because she didn't need to be visible. She needed to be influential, and today that influence was about to be activated. Presiding over the meeting was Frank Caldwell, chairman of the board, a Jewish-American man with over 30 years of experience in finance. He knew Sofia before, but only as one of many promising young tech CEOs. He had never imagined sitting across the table from her, not to discuss software, but prejudice and justice. Frank smiled politely as Sofia entered. "Sofia, thank you for taking the time. I heard the situation at the central branch has been resolved." "Formally, yes," Sofia replied, "but the issue isn't how you handled it." "Then where does the issue lie?" A voice rang from the back. It was Diane Morgan, Vice President of External Affairs. The same woman who had once referred to Sofia as overly sensitive in an internal email months ago. Of course, Sofia knew that. Maya had shown her the leaked message. Sofia didn't look at Diane. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick, full-color report, nearly 100 pages, and placed it in the center of the table. "This is data collected from 36 West Point branches over the past 90 days. Gathered through an anonymous evaluation system we designed based on actual behavior, not self-scored surveys or filtered feedback." Every head in the room turned to the report. Sofia continued slowly. "We sent mystery shoppers representing various ethnicities, social classes, and occupations. The results? White customers were greeted and served within an average of 15 seconds. People of color, 41 seconds, most without eye contact." Silence. Sofia walked to the podium. She connected her laptop to the projector. The screen lit up with the title, "The Silent Bias Report, West Point Operational Assessment, Q1. The first slide showed a chart, positive customer experience scores by race. White, 87%. Latin, 48%. Black, 39%. The next slide played a short clip, hidden camera footage from a branch in Santa Clarita. A black woman in business attire entered, stood waiting for 3 minutes without being acknowledged. A white man entered shortly after, greeted within 10 seconds. Frank frowned. Diane turned pale. "I'm not here to shame anyone," Sofia said. "I'm here so you understand. That indifference disguised as professionalism has become a moral crisis within this system. And if you won't change it, I will." Frank paused, then asked, "What do you mean you will change it?" Sofia looked at him and smiled slowly. "I've purchased 6.2% of West Point's parent company through a 3-tiered investment fund. I don't need a board seat. I need a voice." The room fell into stunned silence. Sofia continued, "And that voice will be used to propose a new policy. I call it the Customer Equality Clause. Every branch will be required to sign a recurring commitment to unbiased customer engagement, with video evidence, anonymous audits, and public accountability for violations." "You can't enforce that," Diane snapped, rising from her seat. "No," Sofia said calmly. "I'm not enforcing anything. I'm simply making this clause a prerequisite for any future investments from Rivera Tech or its affiliated funds." "You're threatening us?" Diane nearly shouted. Sophia replied softly, "No, I'm investing. Investing in truth, and truth sometimes is the shock a system needs to finally wake up." Frank said nothing, but he understood, and he nodded. "The board will convene this week. I'll place your proposal on the agenda." Sophia didn't smile in victory. She simply closed her laptop and slipped it back into her bag. "Thank you. I look forward to the day when a customer walking into any West Point branch is greeted with eye contact, not suspicion." As Sophia left the conference room, some remained frozen in place. Diane pulled out her phone to call her personal attorney. Frank sat still, thoughtful, as if realizing the very system he helped build was starting to crack. But out in the hallway, a janitor, Anita, a black woman who had worked at headquarters for 12 years, had been quietly listening the entire time. As Sophia passed by, Anita smiled. "I used to think about quitting this year, but today I think I might stay a little longer." Sophia paused, nodded gently. "Thank you," Anita said softly. "No," Sophia replied. "I should be thanking you for staying long enough to see the day when your voice finally mattered. I don't need an apology. I need your system to stop demeaning people like me." That was Sofia Rivera's statement in the 17th floor boardroom, a sentence that was quoted tens of thousands of times in just 48 hours. And it marked the beginning of a wave of changes no one at West Point could have anticipated. 3 days later, the New York Times ran a headline that read, "The woman behind the banking industry's earthquake." The article opened with a line that made readers stop in their tracks. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't demand privilege. But she made an entire power structure look in the mirror. A photo of Sophia leaving the bank headquarters, holding a folder stamped with the Rivera Tech logo, quickly became a viral symbol across social media. Short clips from her presentation were reshared hundreds of thousands of times, and in the comments, tens of thousands of people, especially women of color, expressed deep resonance. "I was Sophia once. I got kicked out of a bank just for wearing flip-flops. It's the first time I've seen someone silence a room without yelling." Not long after, West Point was forced to hold a public press conference. In front of hundreds of journalists and a live stream audience, Frank Caldwell, chairman of the board, announced the acceptance of every proposal made by Sophia Rivera and her team, including 1. Implementation of the Customer Equality Clause across all branches. 2. Placement of independent DEI officers at each location. 3. Launch of a quarterly anonymous evaluation system. 4. Public disciplinary actions for staff found guilty of discriminatory behavior. Frank ended his speech with a rare statement from a banking executive. "We're not changing because we were pressured. We're changing because we saw the truth." While the public called it the reversal of the century, Sophia remained measured. She didn't flood the media with interviews. She didn't exploit the PR wave. Instead, she sent a handwritten letter to every employee at the West Point branch. A short message, but one that struck deep. "I don't expect you to become heroes. I only hope that each day you walk into this place, you remember. You are working with human beings, not just files." Inside the bank, real change began to unfold. Quickly, Liam, the one who had mocked Sophia, was reassigned to the Behavioral Analytics Department, removed from customer-facing roles. At first, he considered quitting, but after completing the Unconscious Bias Recovery course, he chose to stay. Not because he felt ashamed, but because he realized he didn't want to remain part of the problem. Haley, Liam's former co-worker, requested a transfer to the Community Relations Division. She began attending minority job fairs, recruiting on behalf of West Point. Rachel, the one who had stood up and apologized to Sophia, was nominated to become assistant branch manager. In a private interview with Martin, she said, "I didn't do anything heroic. I just didn't want to live in silence anymore." As for Sophia, she didn't stop there. She wasn't interested in changing just one bank. She wanted to reform the entire financial service industry, from the inside out, with data and ethics. And so, the Respect First initiative was born. An independent organization founded by Sophia, focused on establishing ethical standards across the service industry, providing anonymous review platforms for underserved customers, training individuals from marginalized communities to become leaders in customer service. Within 6 months, more than 180 businesses had signed on, including major institutions like Brightbank, Medcare, and even several retail chains. And you know what's remarkable? Sophia never posted a single victory message. No selfies from conferences, no emotional videos, no viral speeches. She did just one thing. She kept going. If you followed the story this far, then you understand this isn't just a story about a female CEO being denied a withdrawal. It's a story about a system accustomed to discrimination, being forced to examine itself. About a woman who didn't demand power with words, she reclaimed justice through action. And about one simple truth. Every change begins when one person stands up, even if they stand alone. Late that afternoon, as golden Los Angeles sunlight stretched across the city's high-rises, like silken ribbons bidding the day goodbye, Sofia Rivera was not on a grand stage, nor giving press interviews. Instead, she chose a quiet corner, a small cafe on Ninth Avenue, the same place she used to frequent when she was a young software engineer, dreaming beyond her company's budget. No one in the cafe recognized her. No one called her name, and that brought her a rare kind of peace. She sat at her usual spot, by the window, watching the street, ordered a black coffee, no sugar, and opened her laptop. But today she wasn't checking emails. She wasn't editing strategy decks. She typed a single line into a document titled, "That Day." "I didn't win a war, I just pressed pause," so people could take a moment to see themselves. Behind all the changes she had set in motion, behind the approved policies, the shifting systems, the applause at leadership summits, one quiet question continued to echo inside her. Would that change last? Or was it just the Sofia Rivera effect, fading away after a few fiscal quarters? That's why she remained silent. She didn't speak out daily, didn't stand on every stage, didn't show up as a savior. She understood, if a system only changes when someone like her is watching, then it hasn't truly changed. A week after the event at West Point headquarters, Sophia received a brief email from an unfamiliar address. No company signature, no flashy subject line. Just this. "I used to be like Liam. I used to look at customers with cold eyes. But today I saw an elderly man trying to open an account. And I saw my mother." An anonymous employee. Sophia read it, then read it again. She didn't reply, but she saved it. Not to post, not to brag, but to remind herself, when real change happens, it doesn't need a name. It just needs someone willing to quietly reflect. That same week, Rachel, the young teller who once apologized, sent Sophia a message on LinkedIn. "Thank you for not yelling. If you had yelled, I probably would have tuned you out. But because you stayed silent, I had to listen." On Friday evening, Sophia returned home and poured herself a cup of ginger tea, a simple comfort she'd loved since her days living in a tiny Boyle Heights apartment. Next to her desk sat a faded sticky note, a message left by her grandmother years ago. "You don't need to be loud to speak what's right, but you need the courage not to step back when others raise their voice." She read it again and smiled. Not out of pride, but because in the end, she had done exactly what her grandmother once taught her, in her own way. If you've listened this far, ask yourself, have I ever judged someone just because they didn't look like me? Or have I ever stayed silent while someone was being mistreated just because I thought it wasn't my problem? Don't leave this video without sharing a thought in the comments. We read them all, and maybe, just maybe, your voice could inspire someone else. Drop a comment. "I used to watch. I used to stay silent. But today, I've changed." And if you want to join stories that bring justice, dignity, and the courage to change, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Like this video, share it with at least one friend, someone who needs to be heard, or someone still searching for their voice. Because sometimes, all it takes to change the world is one person brave enough to say no on an ordinary day, just like any other. At the West Point Bank Central branch, there was a small basement that most employees never paid attention to. It wasn't on any training diagram. There were no glass doors, no service counters, just a long hallway with cold fluorescent lights and the hum of the HVAC system, pulsing like the steady heartbeat of a giant, unseen machine. At the end of that hallway was the supply room, the place that held mop buckets, cleaning chemicals, steel carts, rags, and an old radio that still played 1980s soul music. The keeper of that room, the only one with a key, was Dolores Mayfield. Dolores didn't have a company email, no internal login, no shiny nameplate like those at the teller desks. Her contract was with an outside cleaning company, a short-term, replaceable type. But for the past 12 years, since the day West Point's Central Branch opened, no one had replaced her. Dolores lived in South LA, 11 blocks from the bank. She didn't drive. She took bus route 14 every day, boarding the 5:40 a.m. trip and usually arriving by 6:15, a full 2 hours before the first customer walked through the main doors. She mopped the floors, cleaned the bathrooms, restocked the paper towels, checked for burned-out lights. When she was done, she'd take a 10-minute break in the staff room, then disappeared to the basement. No one noticed. No one talked to her. No one asked. But Dolores saw everything. That morning, the day Sofia Rivera was denied a withdrawal, Dolores was cleaning the lobby. As Sofia walked through the door, Dolores had just leaned her mop against the reception table. She glanced up at the young woman in the white blouse, tidy bun, and simple leather bag. It reminded her, instinctively, of her granddaughter, also a software engineer. Recently passed over for a promotion because she lacked positive engagement. Dolores didn't step closer. She stayed in her role, but her eyes tracked every detail. The way Sofia presented her VIP card, the way Victoria received it like it was something someone had accidentally left behind, the way Liam leaned in to whisper to Haley, and finally, the way Sofia said nothing, didn't shout, didn't flinch, just stood there and placed a business card on the desk. It all played out like a scene Dolores had seen before, but this time it had a different ending. After Sofia left, no one thought about Dolores. Not a single person in that room asked if she saw what had happened. They were too busy, forgetting. But Dolores didn't need to be asked. She wrote it all down in a small spiral notebook, the kind she always carried, to remember the things no one else would. The first line she wrote that day was, "The woman didn't yell," but the whole room went silent. 3 weeks later, when Sofia returned to audit the rollout of the respect protocol, Dolores was mopping near the elevator when she saw her come in. Sofia's eyes scanned the lobby, swiftly, sharply, as if sensing the echoes of what had happened that were still hanging in the air. As Sofia passed her, Dolores paused her mop and smiled. "You're Ms. Rivera?" Sofia stopped and turned. "Yes, ma'am." "I saw you that day," Dolores said, her voice raspy with age and a bit short of breath. "I cleaned the floors here. Maybe you didn't see me, but I saw everything." Sofia smiled warmly. "I'm glad to meet you. Thank you for watching." Dolores nodded slowly. "I didn't just watch. I remembered. I remembered the look in that woman's eyes, the look in the employee's eyes, and the way you didn't react. You stood tall, just like my mother." Sofia blinked, deeply moved. "Your mother went through something similar?" Dolores gave a bittersweet smile. "My mother was a maid at a bank in Texas. They kicked her out of the lobby once, just for entering through the front door instead of the staff entrance. They said she wasn't in proper uniform, not on schedule, not the right protocol. But my grandma used to say, there's no right way in the eyes of someone who's already decided you're wrong." Sofia stood still. She didn't ask more. She simply placed a hand on Dolores' shoulder. That day, after finishing her visit, Sofia returned straight to Rivera Tech headquarters. She sat with Maya for 3 hours, revising the rollout plan for the Respect First initiative. She added one line to the formal draft, just below the mission statement: add the Unsung Workers Grant, a special scholarship for janitors, maintenance staff, security guards, and essential service workers at partner institutions. Program name: the Mayfield Initiative. A week later, Sofia returned to the West Point branch. No audits, no announcement. She came with a small bouquet of flowers and a handwritten letter. She found Dolores, handed her the bouquet, and said, "This is a thank you for seeing me when no one else did." Dolores smiled and sat on the guest bench. Her back was slightly hunched. Her hands trembled softly. "I saw you because I know what it's like to be seen through," she said. The official launch of the Mayfield Fund took place the following month at the City Theater, a 600-seat venue. Guests included financial executives, startup CEOs, and representatives from minority communities. In the front row, Sophia reserved a seat just for Dolores. Dolores walked on stage in a light blue dress, tailored just for her. She stood next to Sophia, the founder. When asked by the MC why she chose the name Mayfield, Sophia simply replied, "Because some people don't need to be on stage to create change. They only need to stand quietly in the corner of the room and notice." Dolores spoke just 3 sentences. It was enough to bring the entire room to silence. "I used to think I was just the one who mopped the floors, but today I understand. Even a floor cleaner can lift a building if she's standing in the right place." In the weeks that followed, dozens of news outlets covered her story. They called her the celebrated janitor, the quiet legend, the witness to change. But to Sophia, she was something else entirely, the one who left the past behind, so the future could walk forward. And then one quiet day in mid-April, Dolores retired. No speeches, no big farewell party, just a wooden plaque installed in the ground floor hallway. The same hallway she had cleaned for 12 years, laser etched in the wood. Where Ms. Mayfield once mopped these floors, she also lit the awareness of a new generation. Sophia wasn't there when they mounted the plaque, but that evening, she wrote in her personal journal, "I once stood alone, but I was never truly alone, because some people stand beside you, even without a sound." When Sofia Rivera stepped onto the stage at the National Conference on Equity and Corporate Responsibility in May, most of the audience already knew her as the symbol of quiet revolution, but only a few realized. Her speech that day wasn't just a keynote, it was the formal launch of a global movement. The stage was set at the LA Live Convention Center, draped in deep black with the conference's emblem glowing above, an open circle symbolizing closed systems now made accessible by those bold enough to enter, to question, and to spark dialogue. On the screen behind Sophia was a brand new logo, a blue circle enclosing 3 stylized letters, harmonized like a fractured symphony, RFT, Respect First Trust. Sophia stepped to the podium. No notes, no slides. She didn't need them. What she was about to say had been living in her heart long before that day at the bank. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "if I told you that there's an industry moving billions of dollars every single day, yet allows employees to decide, at will, who deserves respect and who doesn't, you might think I'm talking about a broken system. But the truth is, I'm talking about the service industry." The room went still. We've placed, in the hands of individuals who may carry personal biases, the power to shape someone's experience, sometimes even their entire future, with nothing more than a glance. No policy, no law, just habit, instinct, prejudice. She drew a circle in the air with her hand. "I'm not here today to tell my story. I'm here to declare a program, a framework, a commitment for any organization that still believes in fairness." Behind her, the screen lit up with bold words, "Respect first, from policy to culture." She continued, "Respect first isn't a campaign, it's a system, integrating data, training, evaluation, and feedback to turn the phrase respect everyone into a measurable, auditable, and correctable behavior." As Sophia laid out the program's core pillars, the audience didn't just listen. They took notes. They nodded. They whispered urgently to one another, because what she spoke about wasn't theoretical. It lived in their ignored emails, in the customer complaints they'd overlooked, in the silence they once excused with, "We're just too busy." The 5 pillars of respect. First one, data transparency, monthly anonymous feedback from real people, unfiltered. 2, bias accountability, biased incidents logged and routed through learning tracks, not punishment. 3, community review, real customers involved in scoring service, not just Yelp or Google. 4, unsung worker voice, lowest tier employees empowered to report unjust service culture and receive a response. 5. Rapid Response Team, a neutral task force responding within 72 hours to serious reports of discrimination. As she neared the end, Sophia said, "I'm not here to sell you a checklist. I'm here to ask you, is your organization brave enough to hear the truths that have never been spoken?" When she stepped off stage, no one clapped right away, because everyone was thinking. Then, the room erupted, not out of politeness, but because something in them had shifted. Within 48 hours, over 270 companies, big and small, signed up to join Respect First. The media dubbed it the Rivera Effect. Time magazine ran a feature titled, "She Didn't Just Speak Up, She Rewrote the Code." And yet, through all the headlines and statistics, Sophia didn't appear on talk shows. She didn't answer, "How does it feel to be a symbol?" questions. No red carpet photos, no press junkets. She simply returned to Rivera Tech HQ and opened a new internal folder called Shared Voices, Unspoken Stories. A digital space where anyone in the company, from interns to security guards, could write down the stories they had once buried. No requirement, no reporting process, just a place to exist. A month later, on a business trip to Atlanta, Sophia stopped by a small cafe while waiting at the airport. The server was a young woman, about 20, brown skin, curly hair, slightly wrinkled uniform. As Sophia placed her order, the woman paused, then smiled. "Are you Ms. Rivera?" Sophia nodded. "You don't know this, but because of you, our store changed its internal feedback policy. We weren't allowed to say anything about how customers were treated. Now we have a real inbox, and people actually read it." Sophia just smiled. "Thank you," the woman added, "not for the speech, but for staying after everyone thought the story was over." On the plane, Sophia didn't open her laptop. She didn't read reports. She simply looked out the window, and on the distant horizon, the evening sun poured golden light through thin clouds, like liquid truth spilling across the sky. And she thought, real change doesn't come from words. It comes from the choice to stay, long enough to see it take shape. Monday, 7:03 a.m. Los Angeles woke to soft skies, hazy but not cold. A morning with no events, no press releases, no live streams. But for Sophia Rivera, today wasn't like any other. Not because of meetings, not because of headlines, but because for the first time since it all began. She returned to West Point Bank not for business. She walked into the lobby in her familiar way. White blouse, gray jeans, no makeup, no entourage, just a small leather notebook and a pen. No business cards, no speeches, no titles. The branch was still quiet. Employees were setting up for the day. The front desk receptionist looked up, recognized her immediately, but said nothing. She simply nodded, with the kind of glance one gives someone returning home after a long journey. At window 2, once Victoria Hayes's post, now sat Rachel. She was reviewing early morning invoices. When she looked up and saw Sophia, she paused for a beat, then smiled. Not overly warm, not formal, but with the quiet understanding of two people who had once stood side by side. "Good morning, Sophia," Rachel said gently. "It's been a while." "This time I came to make a donation," Sophia replied, handing over an envelope. "Not for the Mayfield Fund, but for your branch's internal support program. I know everything started with the people here." Rachel took the envelope as if it were more than money, a spiritual offering. "Thank you. We're still learning. Every day." Sophia nodded. "Learning never ends." As she turned to leave the counter, a new employee, a young man with curly hair and shy eyes, hurried over. His name tag read, Marcus, intern. "Excuse me, are you Ms. Rivera?" he asked, voice soft but clear. "Yes," Sophia smiled. "You must be Marcus." "Yes, ma'am. They gave us your training materials during our first week. I didn't think I'd actually meet you in person." "Do you have a question?" Sophia asked like a mentor in a quiet classroom. Marcus scratched his head, unsure. "Actually, I just wanted to ask, how do you stay calm when you know you're right, but people still doubt you?" Sophia looked at him, then sat down on the nearby bench. "The secret is Don't try to prove you're right. Let them realize for themselves that they were wrong. Marcus hesitated. But what if they never realize it? Then at least, Sophia said gently, you've stayed true to yourself. Across the room, an elderly customer struggled with the self-deposit machine. No one noticed. Sophia stood up and walked over. Need some help? She asked kindly. The man turned, surprised. Oh, thank you. I can't read the small text on these machines anymore. Sophia patiently walked him through each step. No name drop. No mention of who she was. Rachel watched from across the floor. She approached, eyes misty. You're still the same, she whispered. Still standing up, just in a different way. Sophia smiled. Standing up isn't always about resisting. Sometimes it's about standing with someone. 9 a.m. The branch grew busier. Sophia left before the crowd arrived. No one knew she'd been there. No selfies, no handshakes, no autographs. But her presence closed a loop, as if the circle that once shattered had finally come full. On the way home, she stopped by the old cafe. The one where she had once written, I didn't win a war. I just pressed pause, so people could see themselves more clearly. She opened her laptop, deleted that line, and typed a new one. Not all change begins with shock. Sometimes a timely glance can save an entire system. That evening, back at Rivera Tech headquarters, Sophia stood before the quarterly strategy board. On it, one small handwritten note, outlined in red, West Point resolved, restored, restarted. Outside the window, the sun dipped westward. Golden light washed over the city towers. A quiet signal that tomorrow, like every day, would begin again. But for Sophia Rivera, and those who once stood with her, tomorrow will never be the same, because they had learned the most important lesson of all. No system is too big to fix, and no person is too small to do what's right. She didn't yell. She didn't slam her fist. She didn't demand to be respected. She simply stood, with the calm of someone who knew she was right and let the system reveal its own flaws. And sometimes, that's how justice returns, not through power, not through publicity, but through unyielding kindness. The kind that makes ignorance impossible to ignore. What Sophia did wasn't revenge. It was a wake-up call to every place that had ever claimed the right to judge others by how they look. She didn't just stand up for herself. She stood up for those with no business cards, no ownership stakes, no voices, only silence and self-worth. And now, it's your turn. Have you ever seen someone treated unfairly just because they didn't look important? Did you stay silent, or did you speak up? Share your story in the comments, because maybe, just maybe, your story will light the way for someone else in the dark. If you believe that respect should never be negotiable, like this video, subscribe to our channel for more stories that challenge us to look inward. Share this with someone who's been judged for not looking the part, because we don't need a perfect system. We just need people brave enough to do the right thing, even when no one's watching.